Hi, I'm Sherry Strong and welcome to returntofood.tv. This is the place you want to come to when you want to learn the truth about what's happening to your food and how to make healthy food taste amazing. Today we're going to create one of my favorite dishes, and this is called coleslaw. Now, I created this dish probably about 10 years ago now, and it is something so super simple that often when you hear and see the ingredient lists, you kind of think, kind of hippy-dippy food is not going to taste that great. But I can't tell you how many times I've made this in a class. I've said that exact same thing, and I've told people how great it's going to taste. And they're like, yes, listening, but once they taste it, they go, oh my God, that's really amazing. So it's very simple. I've got 2 carrots, I've got a very crisp apple, I've got some walnuts, some raisins, and a lime. Now the lime is really the thing that actually brings this recipe to life. People have tried it, they've gone away, said, oh, I don't have a lime, they've tried a lemon, and they've all agreed that it does make a huge difference to actually use a lime. Now the other thing too you want to consider with the limes is you want to make sure you've got a fresh lime. So you don't want a lot of brown marks on it. You want it to be plump and green all around. And the other thing you want is when you scratch the lime, if you scratch it and it has this beautiful lime flavor, you know your lime is actually going to taste great. If you scratch it and you can't smell anything, chances are you're not going to have that beautiful kind of limey flavor. So that's really important to kind of keep in mind. So to start off with, I'm going to actually grate the carrot first. So I always grate the carrot first because I'm going to leave the apple to the last so that it doesn't oxidize. And again, I'm using my beautiful slicer grater, which does make a difference with the julienne grating here. Okay, so it makes a little bit of noise, requires a little bit of effort on my part, but it is definitely a lot easier than actually cutting it into a julienne. And it is absolutely worth every little bit of effort that goes into it. And again, I'm much more interested in keeping my fingers than using up every little bit of the carrot. And as it stands, this salad is actually vegan. And if I chop a little bit of my hand into it, it's not going to be anymore. So you'll see I've left a little bit of that. You can either chew on it, eat it, pop it into a salad, or the compost bin. Either way, it's much better than losing some nails or a bit of flesh. And as I mentioned with these slide graters, you can get the protective mechanism, but what I find more often than not is people will actually use it for 1 or 2 times and then just go back to being really careful and leaving extra bits left. Okay, so that is my carrot part. I'm going to finish off with the apple last because I don't want it to oxidize. I'm going to pop in some walnuts. Walnuts give a lovely different flavor. Obviously, you're going to get a bit of oils from the naturally occurring oils in there, which actually help with the fat-soluble vitamins that are actually in the carrots, right? And then I'm going to chop up some raisins. When I chop up my raisins, you get little hits of sweetness rather than a big kind of burst of sweetness throughout it, so it kind of evens it out and spreads it out. Now, what I like to do when I'm chopping any kind of dried fruit is just wet the knife first. And just that little bit of liquid makes it super easy to cut. Otherwise, it tends to stick and it makes chopping them up hard work. Okay? These are Thompson raisins, so they're raisins that have been dried without sulfur. They're organic, so they're grown without chemicals, and they haven't been coated with oils. Now, this is very typical in the dried fruit industry to actually sulfur them to prevent the kind of discoloration, even amongst raisins, which are going to discolor anyway, and also the oils to stop them from sticking together. If you get them with the oils on top of it, what happens is they may not stick together, but by the time you actually eat your sultanas or your raisins or your currants or whatever, the oils, chances are, have oxidized, and it's not very good taste. It's definitely not good for you. Okay, so that's my raisins, and I love Thompson raisins because they're just a little bit tart. And what's going to happen is that when the zest, the juice of the lime actually hits those raisins, it's going to create a little bit of like a dressing, like a sweet syrupy kind of dressing. Which makes it delicious. Okay, And you notice I don't peel my carrots, I'm not peeling my apple. And this is important because obviously you're getting lots of nutrients in the peel. The other thing is that you'll notice that I'm using the whole apple. This actually in effect becomes my guard, right? And then I just grate around the core. And crisper apples work really well with it, but what you'll find is if you try and make this salad with any other grater, it becomes a little bit mushy. This one is the only one that I've found really effectively that does the julienne properly, where it doesn't kind of get a bit mushy. Get a nice little matchstick. There we go. Let's leave that off to the side. So the last thing I'm going to use is the lime. I'm going to use a microplane grater. These are fabulous for lemon and lime zest, citrus zest. And I'm just going to do it just gently over the apple, or over the whole dish, doesn't really matter. But I don't want to be doing it really hard, and I don't want to go into the white pithy bit of the lime because that is actually quite bitter. It's not very nice for the dish. So I'm just going to do the whole lime just around it. And I wished we had smell-o-vision, scratch and sniff TV, that you could actually smell this right now because it's so beautiful and so fragrant. I know, it's crazy. That's all right. Do you know the #1 complaint that television shows actually get when chefs are actually cooking? People actually write into the shows to complain that chefs are actually using their hands in the dish. Now, we become really kind of over concerned about our hygiene, and I think we're actually worrying more about our natural hygiene practices and less about chemicals, which I think is where we should be actually more worried about. But yeah, that's the #1 complaint that they get on television cooking shows, is the chefs actually using their hands. Your hands are the most functional, amazing tool in the kitchen. As long as you're washing them at least once a week, you're going to be fine. I'm kidding, obviously. But if regular hand washing and you're actually using our hands, washing it with soapy water is actually all we need. We don't need to use gloves with food, and we have prepared food with our hands for literally thousands of years, and that's actually not the problem. It's poor hygiene practices. Washing your hands is fine, and it is enough. And don't be afraid to actually get your hands involved when you're actually cooking. You know, energetically, there are many belief systems that ascribe to the fact that when we cook with love, so the physical, tangible touching of the food, and actually preparing that food with thought, care, and delight, joy, all those things actually do get transferred into the food. And I'm actually one of those people who really believes that. For all the years that I've been cooking, I have always preferred to have food that is prepared by people who are maybe less skilled in the kitchen, but definitely more well-intentioned and love what they do, than to have food that's prepared by people who are 5-star chefs, but are yelling at their staff and yelling obscenities at their staff. So I'm just going to grab a fork, give this a little mix up. There we go. It brings me to another thought that I'm often teaching in my seminars and in my classes, is that how we eat a meal, so the social context in which we eat a meal, is as powerful as what we're eating. I would much rather have a greasy bowl of noodles, and I'm not even saying zucchini noodles. I'd rather have a greasy bowl of noodles with people who are positive, kind, loving, upbuilding, and non-judgmental than to have the most gourmet, nutritiously prepared meal with people who are angry, depressed, negative, and judgmental. And when it comes to eating healthy, I actually believe that judgmentalness at the table is as toxic to the human species as highly processed food. So I think about the power of having food that is nourishing, energizing, and protective, and having that food with people who you love, care, and respect for, and that's where food becomes incredibly powerful. So the spirit in which you bring, the spirit you bring to the table can be as nourishing to the body as the beautiful food that you prepared. So it's just another thing to kind of keep in mind. Now, this is just something that's absolutely super simple, super easy to do, but what I'd like to do is not have you just take my word for it, but have someone come from the back of the room to taste it. Is anyone game? Woohoo! Amanda Gangoso. What do you think?
Delicious.
Super easy, super delicious, right?
I like the crunch, and it's got a little bit of a tang to it.
Yeah, the lime really makes a difference, doesn't it?
So good.
So that is my coleslaw. It's super easy, super delicious. I've served this for breakfast. I served it as a dessert. Put a little bit of this on some chia pudding. Another recipe we'll have for you later on in returntofood.tv. But I hope you'll give this a go.